Imagine having the entire world at your feet, while your own body is literally attacking itself from the inside. At the height of her fame, when she was the most followed person on the planet, Selena Gomez was not enjoying the luxury of private jets and red carpets. Instead, she was staring at a hospital ceiling, wondering if she would wake up the next morning. Behind the glamorous Instagram posts and the catchy pop hits lay a terrifying reality of emergency surgeries, a secret kidney transplant that almost ended in a fatal complication, and a mental health battle that pushed her to the absolute edge. We see the smile, we see the fashion, but we rarely see the scars. This is not just a story about a child star who made it big. This is a story of survival against the crushing weight of an industry that demands perfection even when you are breaking into 1,000 pieces. Before she was the queen of social media, before she found her true voice, she had to lose everything just to find out who she really was. Before she was a global icon, she was just a little girl in Grand Prairie, Texas, watching her mother count pennies just to buy a gallon of gas. Selena Marie Gomez was born on July 22, 1992, to a 16-year-old mother named Amanda Mandy Teefee. Her parents divorced when she was only 5 years old, leaving Mandy to raise Selena as a single parent in a world where money was always tight. There were nights when they had to walk to the local dollar store just to get a 75-cent spaghetti dinner because the car had no fuel. Selena remembers her mother working 3 jobs just to keep a roof over their heads, but Mandy never let her daughter feel the weight of their poverty. Instead, she took her to local theater productions, sparking a flame in the young girl that would eventually change their lives forever. Selena was a shy child, but when she stepped in front of a camera, something shifted. At the age of 7, she landed a role on Barney and Friends, where she met her longtime friend Demi Lovato. She spent 2 years on that purple dinosaur set learning the basics of the industry, but even then she felt like an outsider. After Barney, the work dried up for a while, and she went back to a normal school where she was often bullied for her dreams. She was not the popular girl. She was the girl who stayed in the corners, hoping for a chance to escape her small-town reality. She knew that her family was struggling, and she felt a deep responsibility to help her mother. That drive led her to a nationwide casting call for Disney Channel. It was a 1 in a million shot, but when the executives saw her, they knew they had found their next star. They did not see a poor girl from Texas. They saw a girl with a smile that could sell 1 billion dreams. But as they signed the contracts, neither Selena nor her mother realized that they were signing away her childhood in exchange for a golden cage. Welcome to the House of Mouse, where your mistakes are public property and your identity belongs to a multi-billion-dollar corporation. By the time Selena was 15, she was the face of Wizards of Waverly Place, playing the sarcastic and rebellious Alex Russo. The show was an instant massive success, turning her into a household name overnight. But with that fame came a set of rules that were impossible to follow. Disney stars were expected to be perfect role models 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Every outfit, every interview, and every public interaction was carefully choreographed by a team of publicists. Selena felt like she was living a double life. On screen, she was a powerful wizard who could solve any problem with a wand, but off screen, she was a teenager who felt like she was suffocating under the pressure of millions of eyes. She could not go to the mall, she could not have a normal breakdown, and she certainly could not be a regular kid. The industry wanted her to be a product, not a person. She was working 18-hour days, filming the show, recording music, and touring the world, all while trying to maintain the image of the perfect American girl. The stress began to take a toll on her. She started experiencing anxiety that she did not have the words to describe yet. She was surrounded by people who told her how lucky she was, but inside, she felt a growing emptiness. She was the breadwinner for her family, and the fear of letting everyone down kept her moving forward even when she wanted to stop. She was a puppet in a very expensive show, and the strings were starting to fray. This was the era of the teen idol, where the fall from grace was always just one headline away. Selena watched her peers struggle and stumble, and she promised herself she would never let that happen to her. She kept the smile plastered on her face, but the cracks were starting to form beneath the surface, hidden by layers of stage makeup and studio lighting. They called it a fairy tale, but for the girl in the middle of the storm, it felt like a slow-motion car crash that the whole world was cheering for. In 2010, the rumors began to swirl about a romance between the Disney princess and the world's biggest pop star, Justin Bieber. When they finally went public, the internet exploded. It was the birth of Jelena, a relationship that would define a decade of celebrity culture. To the fans, it was the ultimate romance, but the reality was far more toxic. Selena was suddenly the target of intense hatred from millions of teenage girls who saw her as the enemy for stealing their idol. She received death threats and was picked apart by the media every single day.
Their relationship was a roller coaster of breakups and reunions, played out in the headlines for everyone to judge. Every time they fought, the world knew. Every time they cried, a paparazzi was there to capture the moment. Selena was trying to navigate her first real love while being treated like a character in a reality show. The emotional exhaustion was immense. She was constantly comparing herself to other women, feeling the pressure to be sexier, thinner, and more interesting to keep the world's attention. The toxicity of the relationship began to bleed into her work and her health. She was losing herself in someone else's shadow, becoming known more for who she was dating than for her own incredible achievements. She felt like she was drowning in the noise of the public's expectations. The drama was constant, and the cycle of heartbreak was relentless. She wanted a normal life, but she was trapped in a cycle of fame that fed on her pain. This was not a love story. It was a battle for her sanity, and she was losing ground every single day. The more she tried to hold on to the relationship, the more she felt her own identity slipping away into the void of tabloid gossip. The critics said she could not sing, but they did not realize she was just trying to survive the deafening noise in her own head. As Wizards of Waverly Place came to an end, Selena decided to pivot fully into music. She released albums like Stars Dance, which debuted at #1, but the success felt hollow. She was constantly criticized for her vocal range and compared to her more powerhouse peers. People did not understand that for Selena, music was not about showing off. It was about connection. She felt like she was constantly performing a version of herself that was not real. She was singing songs that she did not always relate to, wearing costumes that felt like armor. Behind the scenes, the anxiety she had felt since her Disney days was evolving into something much darker. She began to experience panic attacks before going on stage. The fear of being judged, the fear of failing, and the constant scrutiny of her body started to break her spirit. She felt like she was a fraud, waiting for everyone to find out that she was struggling. In 2013, she abruptly canceled the Australian and Asian leg of her tour, citing the need to spend some time on herself. The media immediately jumped to conclusions, claiming she was in rehab for drug or alcohol addiction. The truth was far more terrifying, but she was not ready to share it with the world yet. She was dealing with a physical and mental breakdown that no amount of fame could fix. She was being haunted by a ghost that no one else could see, a sickness that was beginning to drain the life out of her. She was 21 years old, and she felt like she had lived 100 years. The music industry was a machine that did not care if she was tired or sick. It only cared about the next hit, the next tour, and the next dollar. Selena was a girl who just wanted to be heard, but she was trapped in a system that only wanted her to be seen. While the headlines claimed she was in rehab for addiction, she was actually lying in a silent hospital bed, undergoing heavy rounds of chemotherapy. In 2015, Selena finally revealed the truth that she had been hiding for years. She had been diagnosed with lupus, a chronic autoimmune disease where the body's immune system attacks its own tissues and organs. The news sent shockwaves through her fan base. People finally understood why she had disappeared, why her weight had fluctuated, and why she looked so exhausted. But the revelation did not stop the pain. Lupus is an unpredictable monster. It caused her intense joint pain, extreme fatigue, and most dangerously, it began to attack her kidneys. Selena was living in constant physical agony while trying to maintain her career. She had to undergo chemotherapy treatments that were traditionally used for cancer patients. She lost her hair, she felt weak, and she was terrified. The physical toll was matched by the mental toll. The disease intensified her anxiety and depression, leading to more panic attacks. She felt like her own body had betrayed her. In the middle of this battle, she released the album Revival, an appropriately named project that showed a more mature and vulnerable side of her. But even as the album soared, her health continued to decline. She was forced to cancel another tour, the Revival Tour, in 2016 because the symptoms had become unbearable. She checked herself into a facility, not for addiction, but for the psychological impact of her illness. She needed to learn how to live with a body that was failing her. She spent 90 days in a treatment center, away from her phone, away from the internet,
internet and away from the pressure of being Selena Gomez. It was the first time she had been still since she was 7 years old. She started to realize that her health was more important than her career, but the hardest part of the battle was still waiting for her just around the corner. There is a specific kind of silence that only exists in a hospital room at 4 in the morning when you are waiting to find out if your best friend's sacrifice will actually save your life. By the summer of 2017, Selena's kidneys were failing at a terrifying rate. She was unable to even open a water bottle because her joints were so swollen from lupus. She was on a transplant list that was years long, and the reality was simple. She was running out of time. That was when her close friend Francia Raisa did something unthinkable. She insisted on being tested, and in a miracle of 1 in a million odds, she was a match. The two went into surgery in total secrecy, desperate to avoid the prying eyes of the media. But the horror did not end when they wheeled her into the operating room. 2 hours after the initial transplant, Selena's body began to reject the new organ. An artery flipped, and she was rushed back into surgery for 6 more grueling hours. The doctors had to take a vein from her leg to build a new pathway for the blood to reach her kidney. If they had been a few minutes later, the world would have lost her that day. When she finally woke up, she had a massive scar that would forever remind her of the thin line between life and death. She spent months in recovery, unable to walk or even move without excruciating pain. For a long time, she could not even look at her own reflection in the mirror because the scar felt like a mark of weakness. She felt a mountain of guilt for what Francia had gone through for her. The public eventually found out through a single heartbreaking Instagram post, but they only saw the beautiful friendship. They did not see the nights of screaming in pain or the fear that the gift of life might still be taken away. This was the moment Selena realized that her platform had to be used for something more than just pop songs. She was a walking miracle, and she had to find a way to live for both of herself and the woman who gave her a second chance at life. She was the most followed person on the entire planet, with over 100 million people watching her every move. Yet she had never felt more invisible or more hated in her entire life. This is the paradox of the digital age that nearly destroyed Selena Gomez. In 2017 and 2018, her Instagram account was a goldmine for advertisers, but for her, it was a source of poison. She would spend hours scrolling through comments, ignoring the thousands of compliments to find the one person who told her she was fat, untalented, or deserved to be sick. The pressure to maintain an image of perfection for 100 million strangers was causing her to have a complete psychological breakdown. She began to experience severe vertigo and heart palpitations every time she looked at her phone. She realized that the digital world was not real, yet it was dictating her reality. In a move that shocked the industry, she decided to walk away from it all. She gave her passwords to her assistant and deleted the apps from her own phone for 4 years. She stopped caring about likes, trends, and the constant noise of celebrity gossip. While the world was obsessed with her numbers, she was obsessed with finding a reason to wake up in the morning. She started going to therapy 5 days a week, diving deep into the trauma of her childhood and the impact of being a child star. She realized that her self-worth had been tied to the approval of strangers for 20 years. Breaking that cycle was the hardest thing she had ever done. She had to learn how to be alone with her own thoughts, without the distraction of a screen. She was the queen of the internet, but she chose to abdicate her throne to save her soul. It was a radical act of self-preservation in an industry that profits from your insecurity. She was finally starting to breathe again, away from the blue light and the toxic comparisons that had kept her in a state of constant anxiety. When the doctor told her she was bipolar, she did not cry or scream. Instead, she felt a wave of relief wash over her, because finally, the monster in her head had a name. In 2018, after another period of intense depression and a stay in a psychiatric facility, Selena received a formal diagnosis of bipolar disorder. For years, she had been fighting an invisible war, feeling extreme highs and devastating lows that she could not control. Having a name for it gave her power. She began to educate herself, reading everything she could find about the condition. She wanted to strip away the stigma that made people feel ashamed of their mental health. This journey of self-discovery led to the creation of her most honest work yet, the song "Lose You to Love Me." It was a final, painful goodbye to the toxic cycles of her past, specifically her long-running drama with Justin Bieber. The song went to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, proving that her vulnerability was her greatest strength.
She followed this with the documentary My Mind and Me, which showed her at her absolute lowest points. She allowed the cameras to capture her crying in bed, her face swollen from medication, and her struggles to get through a single day. She did not want to be a perfect pop star anymore. She wanted to be a real human being. The documentary was a raw, unfiltered look at the cost of fame and the reality of living with a mental illness. She spoke openly about her suicidal thoughts and the moments when she didn't think she could go on. By sharing her darkness, she became a light for millions of others who were suffering in silence. She was no longer running from her truth. She was standing in the middle of it, inviting the world to see that it is okay to not be okay. This was the true revival, not of her career, but of her spirit. Most celebrities launch a makeup brand to make more money, but Selena Gomez launched one to change the way we look at ourselves in the mirror and to fund the mental health services she once desperately needed. In 2020, she founded Rare Beauty, a company built on the philosophy that everyone is unique and that the beauty industry's standards are often harmful. She pledged that 1% of all sales would go to the Rare Impact Fund, with a goal of raising $100 million for mental health resources over 10 years. This was not just a business venture, it was a mission. While she was building a beauty empire, she also made a triumphant return to her first love, acting. She landed a lead role in the Hulu series Only Murders in the Building, starring alongside comedy legends Steve Martin and Martin Short. The world saw a new Selena, one who was confident, sharp, and undeniably talented. She was no longer the little girl from Disney or the tragic figure from the tabloids. She was a woman in her 30s who had taken full control of her narrative. Her performance earned her critical acclaim and Emmy nominations, proving that her talent was more durable than her critics ever imagined. She was also finding joy in the small things, like her cooking show Selena Plus Chef, where she allowed herself to be messy and imperfect in front of the camera. She was building a life that was integrated, where her work reflected her values. She was becoming a mogul, but one who led with empathy and kindness. She started dating music producer Benny Blanco, finding a stable and supportive love that was a far cry from the chaos of her youth. She was finally living the life she had dreamed of when she was a little girl in Texas, but with the wisdom of a woman who had walked through fire to get there. If you ask Selena Gomez today what she is most proud of, she will not point to her trophies or her bank account. She will show you the scar on her inner thigh and tell you it is the most beautiful part of her body. She has reached a place of radical acceptance that most people spend their entire lives searching for. She is no longer afraid of her past, her mistakes, or her illness. She knows that she will live with lupus and bipolar disorder for the rest of her life, but they no longer define her. She has become one of the most powerful advocates for mental health in the world, meeting with presidents and world leaders to demand better access to care for young people. Her journey from a 16-year-old single mother's daughter to a billionaire entrepreneur and global icon is a testament to the human spirit's ability to heal. She still has bad days, she still feels the weight of the world sometimes, but she now has the tools to navigate the storms. She has learned that fame is a platform, not a destination. Her legacy will not be her hit songs or her movies, but the lives she saved by being honest about her own. She has found peace in the quiet moments, away from the flashes of the paparazzi and the noise of the internet. She is a survivor, a sister, a daughter, and a friend. The girl who once felt so ashamed of her parents' divorce and her humble beginnings now stands as a symbol of resilience for an entire generation. As she looks toward the future, she does so with a genuine smile that no longer needs to be choreographed by a publicist. It is a smile earned through tears, through surgery, and through the courage to choose herself every single day. The price of the golden smile was high, but for the first time in 32 years, Selena Gomez feels that she is exactly where she is supposed to be. The story of Before They Were Gone is usually a tragedy, but for Selena, it is a victory. She is still here, she is still fighting, and she is finally, truly rare.